Okay, just letting the attendees load up.
Glad to give you.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the City of Gloucester Zoning Board of Appeals remote Zoom meeting of May 11th, 2023. As the recent amendments, the open meeting law allows, the Zoning Board of Appeals will continue to hold meetings remotely with adequate access through the Zoom link. And for the record, this is Zoom meeting ID 862-2260-8820. I recognize in attendance tonight, myself, Joe Parisi, Vice Chair Catherine Schlichty, members Michael Nyman, Peter Canavo, and alternate Lynn Gillenhall. And I declare we have a quorum. Did those minutes get up on the site that we were
They
talking?
did.
Okay. Yeah, so everyone received the minutes of April 27th, 2023, our marathon meeting. We get a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes of April 27th.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, roll call.
I forgot my papers. Mr. Canavo,
Yes.
Mr. Nyman,
Yes.
Ms. Schlichty,
Yes.
Mr. Parisi.
Yes. Minutes are approved. Before we get into our continued applications, I understand we have a request for withdrawal without prejudice. Is Joel, attorney for Vaza on? We can bring him in for that.
Yes.
This is with regard to 28 Atlantic Road LLC.
Good evening.
How you?
So for the record, Joel Pavaza on behalf of Louis Sampson, owner of 28 Atlantic Road. Per a email request I sent a couple weeks ago, we are just respectfully requesting that we be allowed to withdraw this application without prejudice. The short story is you never know how neighbors are going to react, and my client certainly wasn't looking to upset anybody, and so he wants to kind of hold us back, work with the neighbors, and hopefully come back with something that is going to be workable for everybody.
Okay, thank you. We need a motion to allow the withdrawal without prejudice.
I move that we move to withdraw the application of 28 Atlantic Road without prejudice.
Second.
Made and seconded, roll call.
Mr. Nyman,
Yes.
Ms. Schlichty,
Yes.
Mr. Gelati,
Yes.
Mr. Canavo,
Yes.
Mr. Parisi.
Yes. All set. And I'll make note for the record that Mr. Gelati is on the meeting also. Okay. We're moving on to our continued application. This is the petition of William Wheat seeking a comprehensive permit pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40B, to construct a 30-unit apartment building, the rental housing, of which 8 units are to be affordable at 50 Rear Maplewood Avenue. Before we go to attorney for Vaza, I'm going to call on our representatives, Susan Murphy, to give the board an update of what's transpired since our last encounter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this evening, the focus of the hearing is intended to be primarily on the stormwater design for the site. It's the one major topic related to the site that the board has not had any type of substantive discussion on. There was received since the last hearing a revised stormwater report from the applicant's consultant, Hancock. That was revised date May 2023. There was a revised plan sheet C4, also 5/5/2023, showing grading and utilities. And then after the receipt of that report, the board's peer review engineer, Scott Turner from Environmental Partners, sent an overview letter yesterday, May 10th, because of when he received the report, he hasn't been able to do his full review. But he did consolidate some of his comments from reviewing previous versions of the stormwater report, and has provided a letter with an overview of his open questions. Allison, is he on the meeting that you could bring
He
him
is.
up?
He's here, yeah.
I don't see him.
Scott Turner.
There he is. There he is. Didn't go down enough.
And then I believe Attorney Favaza has some of the engineers from Hancock available who would be making the initial presentation. So I would turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Attorney Favaza. Who do we want to bring in? I'm trying to remember the names.
If you see on your list, Joe Pesnola is there.
He's there, yeah.
I think that's the folks from Hancock probably in under his name. So that should be enough on our end for now.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Joe Pesnola from Hancock Associates. I'm the Director of Engineering for Hancock.
Okay. Are you
So
gonna
if I,
give us the update or,
yeah, if I could share my screen,
sure,
I can bring up some plans.
yeah, should be able to.
Sure. That's not what I want. Can the board see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the stormwater on this site is very unique. In that the lot itself, along with the three abutting lots, 50 Maplewood, the 7-Eleven, and the McDonald's site, are essentially a bowl depression. And when it rains, the water gets stuck in that depression. So all the water from 50R comes down to the back of 7-Eleven. Probably half of the 50 building and all of the back of the building heads towards the back of 7-Eleven. And the low point in the McDonald's lot is in the kind of northwest corner, in that same corner behind 7-Eleven. The elevations in that area around elevation 43. And the only superficial relief from this area is Whistle Stop Way, which acts like a dam before it can spill out over onto into the wetlands. And that's around 46. So let's just use those general numbers: 43 low, 46 high, and a big depression, a big hole where water can collect. So historically, the water has been pumped out of this area, and that is via two pumps. McDonald's has a pump, and there was a pump associated with 50R that was a suction pump up in the island here behind the car wash that was connected via a pipe to a catch basin behind 7-Eleven And when the water went in the catch basin, the pump would activate and it would suck the water out, and it would go, both those pumps would go into a municipal 30-inch drain in Whistle Stop Way. The 7-Eleven pump has not been working for 10 years. And resultingly, when it rains, the 7-Eleven property, 50R and the back of 50 rely on the McDonald's pump to get the water out of there down to a point. There is a crest between the McDonald's island where their pump is and the back left corner of 7-Eleven. There's kind of a high ridge that's probably 4 inches higher than the 7-Eleven catch basin. So if you've ever been back there or looked at an aerial photograph, there seems to always be a puddle in the back of 7-Eleven that's 4 inches deep, because that's the water that can't get to the McDonald's pump and get pumped out to the Whistle Stop Way drainage. McDonald's replaced their pump in 1992, and we have since the last meeting obtained all of the information on that pump. We've also had discussions with Mr. Hale and Mr. Turner with regards to what is the existing condition. What are we trying to match after development? And we initially believed that that was 2 pumps, that we could repair the 50R pump that 7-Eleven that services 7-Eleven and put it back into action, and that would be our baseline. There was a pushback from that, seeing that it's been 10 years and things change. And there's no way to know that, things have changed such that that situation is not tenable. So they asked that our baseline is only the McDonald's pump. So let's talk about what happens in a rainstorm. In a rainstorm, the water starts to puddle in the area that I talked about, goes into the catch basin at the back. The catch basin's on McDonald's, that brings it back to the McDonald's pump. That pump pumps at 600 gallons a minute. It's float actuated, so when the levels get to a certain level in the chamber, in the pump chamber, it turns on and it pumps over to the municipal drain. When the water drops, it shuts off. What we have modeled that in our modeling software to understand when it rains at a certain intensity, how does that pump do? And that pump cannot handle some of the larger storms. So puddles form, and as the storm gets to its crest, its peak, there is puddling, flooding in the parking lots. Very quickly, we overtop that 4-inch differential between 7-Eleven and McDonald's, and the 50R and the 50 and the 7-Eleven water starts to go into the McDonald's pump, and that pump cycles on and off. And at some point in the height of the storm, it stays on, and it stays on for about 11 hours and just keeps pumping that 600 gallons a minute into the municipal system. So what we are looking to do in the proposed condition is not change the rate that water enters the municipal system or the volume that enters the municipal system. The other parameter that we've been instructed to abide by is that we can't cause ponding on any adjacent sites for the 25-year storm. And Mr. Turner gleaned that from the Gloucester subdivision regulations as guidance. This is not a subdivision. I'm not proposing a road, but when looking at Gloucester's regulations in total. There was at least some guidance there. So that is counter to what happens today in the 25-year storm. In the 25-year storm, as I said, which is one of the larger storms, the McDonald's pump can't handle it, so it puddles. So there's ponding from McDonald's onto our site, from our site onto McDonald's. It's all just one big happy puddle. And it gets to be about 2 feet deep in the 25-year storm at the peak of the storm. When the storm starts to wane, the pump can catch up, and the water is drained from that. So the only way that we can meet those parameters is to put a significant amount of storage, stormwater storage, on our site. And we've looked at that and looked at what that will look like. So we are now proposing underground concrete chambers underneath the parking lot that will be about 30 feet wide, by 80 feet long, by 7 feet deep. It's a big catacomb. It has 29,000 cubic feet of storage in it. And the way that we got that storage requirement was that's the only way to meet what we believe to be the requirement for post-development stormwater attenuation. We can't increase the rate of water that leaves the site in the 10-year storm in accordance with DEP stormwater regulations. And we have to abide by those regulations because we have conservation jurisdiction. So the only way we can do that is take the entire 10-year storm and put it underground. Now, that's not just our water, because as I said, when it starts to get above and the McDonald's pump can't handle it, or we're all sharing water. So now some of McDonald's water and some of 7-Eleven water is going to go into our system and fill that. And that defines, and we are going to have a pump in there and a float in there. And the float is at the top of that storage. So in the 2 and the 10-year storm, no water leaves our site, no water leaves our storage. And the only thing that's going to leave this area is the McDonald's pump at 600 gallons a minute. So in the 2 and the 10-year storm, we have not increased the rate of runoff from the site. And in fact, during the peak of the storm, we've significantly reduced the volume leaving the site. And that 11 hours that the pump was on, that the McDonald's pump is on today in the 25-year storm, is reduced significantly down to about 7 hours. So less time we pump, the less volume we pump, but the rate, it doesn't change. And then what we will do is once the storm is over and the water in the Whistle Stop Way drainage system has drained itself out to the harbor, we will activate our pump, empty our storage, and have it ready for the next storm. So part of the, as I said, part of the parameters that were asked of us was that we don't have any more ponding on the adjacent sites in the 25-year storm. What happens, because we've significantly reduced the volume leaving the McDonald's site, is that 25-year stage, that 2 feet of water, is less. So we're improving McDonald's. We're vastly improving 7-Eleven because they don't have a pump anymore. And we're taking care of business on our own side. So we meet that parameter that we don't pond onto the adjacent sites. But we do pond on our site, but for a short period of time, because during the 25-year storm, our pump, we will exceed that float level and our pump will come on. And there are a few times where both the McDonald's pump and our pump will be running simultaneously. So Mr. Turner has noted that to be an increase in the rate of runoff to the whistle stop drain system. We contend that that is not one of the parameters we need to meet. So we believe we've met the parameters that were put before us. We meet DEP stormwater guidelines for attenuation of rates of runoff for the 2 and 10-year storm. And we believe that we have a vastly improved system for the entire area at a significant cost. This system will cost in excess of $200,000. So Mr. Wheat has ran through the pro forma and he thinks he can absorb this monumental cost. But we see this as the only way that we can meet the parameters that were set for us. Again, vastly improve the situation. Now that's taking care of business on our site, 50 Maplewood, 7-Eleven, and McDonald's. Mr. Hale has brought up the concern with what is happening with that pipe in Whistlestone. Can it even take the 600 gallons a minute? So we have met with Mr. Hale. We've received some documentation that he's graciously put together for us with regards to the systems in the area. And we've committed to analyze that system to better understand its capacity and its interaction with our model and what's happening. So that's an outstanding item. We still need a little bit more information from Mr. Hale and his staff, and we're going to continue to work on that and get that information and give that analysis to him and his team to look at. But I think we have done everything we can, everything we need to, and beyond on the site. And now we just have to do a little bit of an analysis to give comfort to Mr. Hale with regards to any impacts on his system. And again, I truly do not believe that there will be any impacts to his system because we are not pumping more than 600 gallons a minute, and we're not. We're actually decreasing the volume by leaving the site by 29,000 cubic feet. So I think in the end analysis, we'll get to a place of at least as comfortable as he can be, knowing that the systems out here are taxed, and there has been historic issues with it. But the bottom line is that when it rains, the McDonald's pump goes on. And it pumps 600 gallons. So that's not going to change. I think that's it. Mr. Chairman, I do apologize for getting kind of very technical, but I think the situation warrants that level of detail. Happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to just quickly tie one little bow on this. For the non-engineers among us, I did a quick calculation that 29,000 cubic feet that Joe was talking about translates to roughly 217,000 gallons. So now they're trying to figure out what 29,000 cubic feet of storage is. It's again, roughly 217,000 gallons in that storage system he's proposing. And the other point that I wanted to bring up is because Mr. Wheat has committed to, he's gonna have a solar roof that enables him to either use house backup battery or a simple generator backup. Either way, the pump system that Joe is proposing is going to be hooked up to a backup electrical system so that in a large storm, it also knocks out power for the area. This pump at 50R will not shut off. I believe right now the McDonald's pump shuts off when power is lost when traditional power is lost. And in that, Joe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the 50R system will not only remain powered itself, but then will allow itself to actually kind of tag in and help out the McDonald's site by coming online in McDonald's pump's absence during the outage, and then cut back off when McDonald's pump is restored power. Is that correct, Joe?
That is correct. So you'll significantly reduce the amount of ponding in the McDonald's site in a power outage. Because again, there's a 4-inch differential at that high ridge. So there'll be 4 inches of water back in the back right corner of McDonald's until power comes back on. Very similar to what happens today at the back of 7-Eleven, because there's 4 inches stuck back there.
So, question. I read your 76-page report we got today. Seems like we're getting everything at the last minute, but anyway, nowhere in there did I see any indication that Mr. Hale from Department of Public Works is giving us any guidance that he agrees with this approach. So we
Oh,
don't.
No, Mr. Chairman, no, he has not. He's waiting until we can do that analysis for him and holding his comment until then. I hope I didn't.
Well, my point is, we're running out of time here, so. And if we don't get, I mean, if that can't be satisfied by the deadline, this can't go forward, but.
Mr. Chair, just with all due respect, obviously, as you can appreciate, the city departments are incredibly busy with a number of projects. And so although we've requested the information, they've been kind enough to have to compile it. We're not able to ourselves proactively go and pull the information, and they're not able to stop all the work that they're doing to pull it for us. We have received the information, but it was literally Monday of this week that data started coming out from DPW to our team to start reviewing that pipe. And so, no fault on their end. They're incredibly busy. It's a courtesy of doing this for us. We have no ability without that courtesy to get this data. So we've been working since we had a conference call in late March to get this information, to synthesize information and get back to DPW. It's just the practical reality of this is it's a slow process given how busy the city is with a multitude of projects and how crucial that data they hold is for this process. And no one's been dilly-dallying here. It's just been, unfortunately, 4 or 5 weeks to get the stuff over to us. And obviously Joe and his team are turning it right around as fast as they can to get back out to them now that we have that information.
Right, but at the end of the day, that's not going to be an excuse. We reach our deadline, there's going to have to be a vote. And because the city didn't, this has been going on, it should have been designed correctly in the beginning. That was what I would argue. And we put in, I don't know how many months now in this thing. And we never seem to get information in a timely manner. But anyway. neither here nor there.
So, Mr. Chair, if I would just say since there's been a lot of kind of back and forth and considering designs going on for a number of months, there may be some information that all the engineers are aware of that the board may not have heard yet. So, Mr. Pesnol, could you just speak to the issues related to height of groundwater and what the soils are like and how that factors into the design, just so the board has that information on the record as to those conditions on the property and how they're factoring in?
Right. Thank you, Susan. Good point. Groundwater is high. We do have peat out here, but we chose the system that we're using. It's a system called Storm Trap. They're concrete chambers. Essentially, we're going to excavate a large hole. We're going to pour a slab. We're going to put these chambers in, and we're going to lash them down so that they don't float, so that it overcomes the buoyancy. We're actually going to, because they're 7 feet deep, they will go through and below the peat onto a good bearing surface, and we'll make sure that structural engineers look at what's below that peat, that it's sufficient for taking the loads of this. So we did consider at one time, the building itself was going to be on helical piles, and we did consider supporting this drainage system on piles, but we don't believe we have to, because again, it goes below that peat layer.
Well, it's 1.9
That was of
million
concern to
pounds.
Mr. Turner.
It's 1.9 million pounds of water. So I think Mr. Turner has some questions about the capacity to support that.
Yeah, I think it's just whether he was concerned that the peat would be, and the peat's not going to support that. So, but we're below the peat.
We know that for sure. We've done
Yes,
we didn't do enough test bits in the beginning to use the right system. Then when we did more testing, you found out how far were we down below the peak? Do we know that all across?
initially we had borings that identify the level of where the peat is and where the peat cuts out. Those borings were not sufficient for the initial stormwater system. It just, Mr. Chairman, in defense of myself, I guess, I believe that the initial system was properly designed. It was a matter of difference of opinion between myself and Mr. Turner. And we don't need to hash through that, but I understand what's in the best interest of my client in moving through a public hearing process like this, with your board looking to Mr. Turner as your expert, that I need to put my beliefs aside sometimes and move on. And then there was discussions with regards to setting the parameters. And there were, again, a very unique site or series of sites. So it warranted some thoughtfulness by Mr. Turner to kind of look at those, look and set those parameters. And that's ultimately what's led us to the design today. I would never have guessed in a million years.
I'm just trying to be open and give you forewarning of what I think we're gonna continue to accept as delays. And like I say, push is gonna come to shove when we're gonna have to take a vote. So I hope we resolve all this before that.
Right. Mr. Chairman, would be foolhardy not to give you an extension if we're moving towards resolution of these items and we hit the 180 days. And
It's a
we
two-way
can,
street. It's not just whether you want to give us an extension. We may choose to vote at that point and say we don't have adequate information and turn it down. I mean,
I understand. I
that's all
understand,
I'm getting to the
Jim,
point
but
of.
we're
I'm just
we're-
trying to be upfront early. Let's get this going. It's been delayed long enough and taken enough of our time that and it shouldn't have had to. Well,
understood.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask a general question?
sure.
I just want confirmation from Mr. Pesnola that I'm understanding this correctly. As designed, there will end up being two pumps. There'll be the 1992 McDonald's pump, and then the new pumping system that's going to be on 50R, and that excess water that can't be pumped out is going to be stored underground in a large underground storage tank. But still, when there's a 25-year flood, there will still be ponding on the behind 7-Eleven McDonald's.
Yes, but less ponding than happens today in the
That is now. Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I fully understood. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
It might be helpful if, Mr. Chair, if you're ready for Scott Turner, maybe
Yeah.
to walk through his analysis.
Yeah, if Attorney Favazza is all set so far, at least on this one point.
Yeah, that's fine. I think it'd be great to hear from Mr. Turner. Thank you.
Yep. Let's bring Scott Turner up and he's given us a preliminary assessment, but again, he's only had the plans, the revisions for a couple of days, so it wasn't totally clear, but.
Okay, good evening. Thanks for Thanks for having me. As you stated, I got the plans on Monday, but this is not a new system that being proposed. It was something that was one of many things that we discussed on the site when we did the test holes and understood that, you know, the soil conditions are not, in my opinion, not appropriate for infiltration because of the peat, the fill, and the high groundwater. So anyways, we've had a discussion about this. I had a discussion with Peznola probably a month ago, might have been a little bit more or a little bit less. And I sat in a meeting with Mr. Hale and Mr. Peznola talking about the capacity in the pipe in Whistle Stop Way. I did talk with Ms. Murphy on Tuesday, and given the fact that we received plans on Monday, she asked me to put together my thoughts and a high level, I guess just comments and recommendations about it, understanding, you know, the review, this is probably my fourth review of submittals, and, you know, the discussions I had with Mr. Peznola and the meeting we had with Mr. Hale. And so my impression is that, or my opinion is that this site, and I don't think Mr. Peznola disagrees with me, that this site is probably one of the most difficult sites to try to develop, simply because it has really poor soils. I'm convinced that at some point the site was probably wetlands that was filled, and that's probably years and years and years ago. I actually looked at USGS quad sheets and I couldn't find any that showed that it was wetlands, but the soil conditions underneath it indicate there was probably a wetland there at some point. You know, I agree with his analysis about how all the water from the surrounding properties drains towards the pump in the 7-Eleven McDonald's and the McDonald's site. And because the pumps don't work and they don't have the capacity, they do not get enough water. They can't evacuate the water fast enough to prevent the ponding from occurring. I also understand that, you know, he's limited in terms of what he can do. If you got another pump, you know, periodically your peak rate will increase over what's there now, because you have one pump pumping, and if you had a second on top of it and the curves line up, you will have a higher rate of discharge into the line in Whistle Stop Way. You know, the only other option I can think about is, you know, potentially pumping to the wetlands, but that would be an increase as well. You know, I heard Mr. Hale's concerns about the capacity of the pipe in Whistle Stop Way. I took a look at the elevations that are on the survey. It's hard for me to understand really which direction that pipe is flowing, and I don't know if it's just that the survey had trouble measuring the inverts, or if the pipe has settled a little bit, and not seeing the entire picture of how the system is designed. You know, what I was looking at, I was trying to figure out what the capacity might be by looking at the slope and looking at the size of the pipe. But I think that's important to try to get some the design information for that pipe, what it was intended to carry and what it really does carry. I did look at the USGS quad sheets, or I'm sorry, the city's GIS system. You know, there's a significant watershed that flows to this area. Now I understand that there's a lot of piping and a lot of drainage system that probably intercepts a lot of that water that I couldn't see on part of that USGS quad sheet. I'm sorry, on that GIS map. So it's hard to tell how much water flows through this pipe. But Mr. Hale is concerned about it. I did receive some additional documents yesterday. Yesterday morning, they were mostly documents that talked about sewer separation. Some of these documents were back from like the 80s and the 90s. They were environmental documents, so I'm not sure how much help those are going to be. I don't know if Mr. Peznola received different documents with more specificity about the pipe that's in the ground, but based on what I saw, I didn't see anything that could really, you know, determine what the capacity of the pipe in Whistle Stop Way is. I think that the solution that they're proposing is probably the only one that they have. I think it's, it's just because this is a very different site. The plans that I have don't have any details regarding the pump. There's no construction details or anything like that. So I think he's trying to describe an approach that we can generally move forward from, which I understand and I agree with. As you mentioned before, I am concerned about how that tank is going to behave in the ground. When we were out there on the site, all I saw was peat and some clay in the holes on top, below the fill. So haven't seen any other holes that show sand or anything below it. But borings will show that. So I'm not, if they do appropriate borings or do a few more borings, maybe they already have, that'll probably address that issue. Ideally, you want to have a site that doesn't have any ponding on it. And, the calcs that they submitted this week show that there's ponding on the site for the going back to the 2-year storm, the 2-year storm, the 10-year storm. One thing to keep in mind is that, however, I agree with, based on the information I have, I agree with Mr. Pesnola that the ponding or the flooding will be better than what's there now. And I guess I have 2 items regarding that. The first is, engineers are trained to analyze, the 2, the 10, the 100-year storms, but really, in the 2-year storm is really 3.5 inches. 90% of all rain events in Massachusetts are less than an inch. So I think it might be important. I think it might be a good idea to put the 1-inch storm in there and just see how this behaves, see how the system he's proposing behaves. And my sense is that it probably won't show any ponding. So I think that will alleviate a good amount of ponding is currently experienced on the site. Let's see. It's a redevelopment site. So for the stormwater standards, he's required to meet the standards to the maximum extent practicable. I definitely hear his discussion about this being a very expensive system. I totally get that. But I also understand too that there's a problem that's been going on forever. And if it's not fixed now, I'm not really sure when it would ever be fixed. I did look a little bit at the calcs. I had some questions about the curve numbers that they're using, which are details that I'm sure they could work out later on. There was no 100-year storm submitted, and typically during a 100-year storm, there's flooding everywhere. But that was not submitted. And I would expect that as the design progresses, there would be more details associated with the plans. But I do think it's important to understand the situation and the condition of the pipe and whistle stop, and alleviate Mr. Hale's concerns. He knows the system better than anybody. He's had to manage it for some time, and if he's concerned, I think that's legitimate and needs to be addressed. So I think in summary, that's what I have. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think in general, I'm in agreement with Mr. Pesnola. This is a very difficult site. This is an extraordinary system that he's proposing, very expensive. And, when you have a difficult site, that's what it takes to develop.
Okay. Thank you. And for the members, this was posted this week, the report and his Scott Turner's analysis. If any, I think you all started to look at that.
Yeah.
Susan Murphy.
Yes.
So I know we talked about the water and sewer. We covered the traffic pretty well. We got some explanation about the architectural design and the limitations on the depth of the lot. What was the other components if we just take this drainage thing and push it aside for now, what else could we deal with tonight
I think the last item that we didn't spend any time on at the last hearing, just because ran out of time, was a review changes in the requested waivers. Some of them are getting tweaked based on the meeting we had in person back in February. There were just some updates and corrections that were needed, and there may have been I think there might have been one or two more, Attorney Favaza, you correct me, that have been added since then. But I don't know. I think in all of our discussions for preparing tonight, we were so focused on the stormwater. I don't know if we have those to go. Those won't take much time. So if we didn't cover them tonight, we could cover them pretty quickly at another meeting, but I defer to Attorney.
Our next meeting, this will be unless we continue anything tonight, this will be the only item on the agenda. Will be 50. So we'll have plenty of time. That's our May 25th. No, am I right on Allison? That's the one, right? That May 25th.
You're correct.
So May 25th meeting will be exclusively 50 Maplewood unless, so I really, can we get that, the listing of the waivers in a more concise form, maybe that we could at least walk through and see are there going to be any that members may have problems with or want to have further discussion? And maybe we'll have a more update. It's only a couple weeks away. Well, it's actually, yeah, it's 2 weeks away. Maybe we'll have a little more update on drainage at that point too, because I'd love to knock off as many of these things as we can so we keep moving forward.
Yeah, I think right now the waivers are mainly on the first page of the plan set, if that's correct. It might be
Well, that's the
helpful to just
problem,
have
too.
a
I'm sorry to
separate-
interrupt you. Sorry to
Okay.
interrupt you, but when we had that in-person meeting too, we were all supposed to get a new site plan with all that on it in a large format. And we haven't got that. So everybody's sitting at home and they're trying to look on their computer and we couldn't read those waiver requests off of what we have available to us in a Zoom meeting. We need to get those copied and mailed out to everybody or whatever, so that people can have a real plan they're looking at. And that was requested back at that February or whatever it was in-person meeting where we wanted that. I don't know where that stood or where it fell apart.
Well, now there's a new set coming in, I believe, maybe, and then that's probably the better one to have anyway, because it'll be more updated. Do you have timing on that, Joel?
Yeah, so to Mr. Chair's point, there was going to be a March 20th revision that was going to be provided in hard copy also, but almost as soon as it was submitted, there was feedback from a neighbor and from city reviewers about further change that needed to be made. So the hard copies were not produced, knowing that it'd be kind of a fool's errand to have you dig into those. So this May 5th revision set that we've started looking at tonight via the drainage, there's going to be a comprehensive May 5th revision set that'll be submitted officially, I believe next week, and that we could do hard copies of that because we're getting to the point where traffic has been set. Again, we have to update the lighting. I think Attorney Murphy was talking about what's left. We're going to update the lighting, moving those vacuums, right? Traffic was all set. We have drainage. Again, Attorney's pointed out the detail he's requesting for the new drainage plan. But that's all a May 5th revision set that we should be able to, get stamped and submitted as a comprehensive instead of this piecemeal, like here's new sheet C4, here's new sheet C7, all the way through cover to end. And that would be something that we could hard copy for everyone now that we've got a lot of these sheets solidified from previous meetings.
Great.
Does that set have the swept path plan as an actual plan page
Yeah.
as opposed to just a freestanding? Or is
Yes,
it?
yes, and the only thing, you have not seen yet will be the official. There's obviously the lighting plan that Hancock has done, but the third-party lighting contractor has the more detailed sheet set that'll be included as part of this also, so that you'll have your swept path, which is additional to the usual set. You'll have the lighting sheets that'll be additional also, and then you'll have the normal Hancock sheets that you've seen iterations of previously.
Or, yeah.
Mr. Chair, could I also ask, there was the last review letter from Jeff Dirk that we talked about at the last hearing. I know that your traffic engineer kind of responded to them on the meeting, but I don't think we've seen a written response to the comments. I think they said they could address Jeff's comments and that could be done, but I don't know that we've actually seen that in writing.
I didn't think there was going to be a written response because we agreed to just incorporate all the changes into the updated traffic plan. If you- Confirming from Ken saying we have incorporated all of your suggestions, we can get a one-pager out.
Do we have a revised traffic plan that incorporates them?
It's part of the May 5th set, but is not
Oh, okay.
submitted.
Okay.
Again, this drainage plan was submitted to get a conversation going about the new direction of drainage. But we have, again, trying to avoid submitting version after version after version of the complete plan set, which only, risks confusion if someone's still looking at March 20th and now we're talking about May 5th. Or if there was, an even later version. So we didn't submit the full May 5th package yet. We want to get the conversation about the drainage. Additionally, I know we've been talking for a while tonight. It's up to the chair whether he wants to push us until the 25th. I can touch briefly on like some quick architectural changes that were made. We also have some interior 3D renderings that we could share tonight, or we can push it off to the 25th. But there have been efforts made to work on some of the aesthetic choices made for the appearance of the building from the outside, really kind of maximizing the layout on the inside, make it as functional as possible, make sure there's interior storage where possible, that sort of stuff. So we can speak about that on the 25th, but that work has been ongoing also. We have that as part of the revision also.
Yeah,
Right.
that would be great for the 25th, because there
Sure.
have been even some members, board members that are wanting to talk a little bit more about that, but I know you guys did take a lot of feedback from different people, including at the site visit. So yeah, it'll be good to see that all. And like I say, the whole meeting next time will be dedicated to this. So we can go 2 hours or longer, no problem.
I just have two more questions. So, can the waivers, in addition to being on the first sheet of the plan, can there just be like a separate, maybe you can put them in a letter or a memo or something and just on a, separate, rather than just, they're easier to read, maybe if they're in memo form than just on the plan, kind of.
Yeah,
just
we submitted the updated application package renaming the applicant. We had a separate chart as part of the ZBA form, and we'll update that again and submit that again. That's no problem.
Okay, that'd be great. And then what are the next steps? I don't know if Mr. Pesnola or Mr. Turner, like what's the next step for the stormwater design? Is it reviewing? I don't know. Scott had said this was kind of, he put together this list fast just to have something for the meeting. I know Mr. Pesnola needs to respond to those. I don't know, Mr. Turner, what do you feel like needs to happen? I know you said you haven't been able to get into the calcs and everything else they did. What would what do you think are the next steps for your review? And then what the board needs to see from Mr. Pesnola?
From my opinion, need to understand what's going on with the existing drain pipe and whistle stop. And so again, I don't know what you've received from DPW, if it's different than what I've received. If it's the same as what I received, I think he needs more information.
Yeah, you received the same as I did, and I've put an email back to Mr. Hale that says that
Okay,
I think General Counsel Egan is also trying to work with Mr. Hale to try to find that, or get the information that's needed, so I can touch base with her tomorrow and ask her. Okay, and then other than that, what else do you think needs to?
we need to understand. I mean, essentially what we have, and Mr. Turner mentioned it, when the city was required to separate the drain from the sewer back in the 80s and 90s, they put a new trunk drainage line down Washington Street. Goes down Washington Street, goes to Middle, crosses Western, goes out to the harbor. So we know that system has a great capacity because it's running down to the harbor. We don't have between Whistle Stop and and Washington at Prospect, the connection, well, how does the water from Whistle Stop get to Washington at Prospect? And we need that missing piece to be able to then analyze the impacts to the system.
So they don't have that, because I know when we did the CSO, previous to that, that pipe, that runoff went under Railroad Avenue, under Pearl Street to Addison Street, and then it came out onto Washington. And when they did the CSO project, that was all tied back into Washington in the big 60-inch pipe. And I don't know that it still doesn't go that way, because that was all tore up. Addison Street got all torn up, Pearl Street, Railroad. So they must have, I mean, as-built so that it was a recent project. It was in the 2000s.
Right. I mean, one of the largest documents given to us was the plans for the CSO and that 60-inch line that runs down Washington to the harbor, and all of the documentation on the CSO. So I just assumed that, you know, Mr. Hale believes that Whistle Stop connects to that somehow. We just don't have the area between where Whistle Stop comes out next to 15 Whistle Stop on Washington, and goes under the railroad and gets over to Washington at Prospect.
Hmm.
So I put an email into Mr. Hale and need to follow up with him again tomorrow. And I guess worst case scenario is if they don't have the information, we'll have to go out and just field obtain it.
Well, they should, yeah, okay.
I also think, you know, I mean, I know time seems to be of the essence. You know, like I said, the plans that they put together, you know, are enough for a concept, but I would expect at some point there's something that's more detailed that shows, you know, details of the storm trap. I'm familiar with it. I'm not uncomfortable with it. I mean, I think that's a good system to have. Details about the pump station, and just, you know, all the traditional details that you would typically submit. And
Well,
the first thing is to make sure you can connect to that pipe.
no, I mean, understand that this is a 40B, and,
Yep.
and many 40Bs are conditioned that detailed information, such as construction details, are done post permit. We're trying to get a point where we're tackled the big issues.
Understood.
I know the devil's in the details, but essentially the concept here is to use the same Gould's pump, 600 gallon per minute pump that McDonald's has. So that's our specification, what we used in the calculations. And we've got to design that storm trap system with the folks at Storm Trap, so it holds up. And then so in any event, I think our time is better served at addressing Mr. Hale's concerns and trying to get a handle on that 30-inch pipe and what's happening there, and get that out to everybody.
I agree. If the big thing for me is getting him to say, yeah, you can tie into this pipe. And then you guys can argue about the details after that, but we can move forward based on that.
Exactly.
Okay. Any members have any questions or things they want to see covered at the next meeting? Different than what we've been?
I
Yeah.
think you covered them. Yeah.
I think getting to see the changes they're making to the design, interior and whatnot, because there was a lot of comment about closets and different things and laundry and, you know, so it'll be good to see that too, which should quell any of the concerns. I mean, not normally our purview, but good to know what's happening. Yeah.
So Joel, when you drop off this new set, you know, this new set of plans, are you gonna leave copies for each of us to pick up down there as well?
Yes, we'll submit, I'm gonna do seven full size plus one for an office copy.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Anybody else? Anything we need to cover now, or we good? Susan, you all set?
Yeah, I was just making notes, so I think we're good.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to continue this hearing to May 25th, 2023.
I move, we continue the petition of 50 and 50R Maplewood Avenue to our next hearing on May 25th.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, roll call vote.
Mr. Nyman,
Yes.
Mr. Gelati,
Yes.
Mr. Canavo,
Yes.
Ms. Schlichty,
Yes,
I
Mr. Tracy.
vote yes also. Let's continue. Now, member Mike Nyman is going to be stepping off the meeting. And so Len, you'll be voting on the next two cases before us.
Thank you.
Okay. The other members.
Have a good evening, all.
thank you. Bye, Michael.
All right. Our next new application is the petition of Sarah Ann Hackett Trust, 1994, for a special permit to subdivide a lot containing 2 detached dwellings into 2 lots at 31 Leonard Street. This is represented by Attorney Frontiero, I believe. Yes. Bring Sal in.
Yep.
Good evening, Sal Frontiero, 46 Middle Street, Gloucester, for the petitioners. I represent Paul Hackett and Susanna Taylor as trustees of the Sarah Ann Hackett Trust. The site in question is 31 Leonard Street, it's located in Ennisquam in the R20 zoning district. And the petitioners are here today seeking permission under section 3.1.5 of the zoning ordinance to divide this property into 2 lots. As to the site characteristics, it's 1 lot totaling 15,812 square feet, and it's on the corner of Leonard Street and Arbor Street. It currently contains 2 detached single-family buildings. The first is a 5-bedroom, approximately 2,312 square foot home built in 1920. That's known as 31 Leonard. The second is a 2-bedroom, approximately 1,116 square foot home, also built in 1920 and known as 31 Leonard Street. Neither structure currently complies with the dimensional requirements of section 3.2, but each is legally non-conforming. They propose to divide the lot into 2, with each resulting lot containing 1 single-family home. More specifically, the first lot, which is shown as proposed lot A on the plan, would contain the 2-bedroom dwelling, the smaller dwelling, on approximately 4,585 square feet of land. And the second, which is shown as proposed lot B, would consist of the 5-bedroom building, and that would contain approximately 11,227 square feet of land. At present, there are 2 driveways and parking areas on the site, each serving 1 dwelling exclusively. Proposed lot B is accessed through the rear through Arbor Street, and proposed lot A is accessed through the front through Leonard Street. Although Leonard Street provides ample width for emergency vehicle access, lot B will also be accessible for emergency vehicles via its frontage on Leonard Street. And upon separation of legal ownership, can happen upon division, only upon separation of legal ownership, because we're talking about easements. Proposed lot A will be granted an easement for the purposes of accessing proposed lot B, which you can see on the plan. And so as such, there'll be ample access for emergency vehicles. The rear driveway of Arbor Street can be used for occasional access for lot A, and again for emergency access without notice. Also, there are small landscape walls that are on the proposed lot line, which you'll see in red. And those benefit the larger lot, proposed lot B, and easements will be retained for the purposes of maintaining those walls as well. They're not very high. That's why we kind of call them landscape walls rather than retaining walls. Both properties are served by a step pump tank system located on proposed lot A. The city has an easement to do that. There will be easements in place again for the sewer components for each lot, so that each lot will be able to access the other for any kind of sewer apparatus or any kind of utility system. And as far as the special permit goes, Under section 3.1.5 of the zoning ordinance, a lot containing more than one primary dwelling building that was built prior to 1960 may be divided as a matter of right into two lots if both resulting lots comply with the dimensional requirements of section 3.2. If not, a special permit is necessary, and the special permit is granted upon a written determination that neither the proposed division of the original lot nor the proposed uses of the resulting lots will endanger public health and safety. So it's a fairly strict, fairly limited standard to follow. And it also, in section 3.15, specifically states that in such a case, the resulting lots do not need variances. Here, the uses will remain exactly the same, so that's not an issue. And so we're down to whether or not the division will endanger public health and safety. I think the applicant has demonstrated that no access will be impeded whatsoever when these lots are divided. There really will be no change to the status quo as far as what is physically happening. There's no building going on. The neighbors won't even know this is happening basically because it's just a lot line division. So it's just a legal change. Again, plenty of access off Arbor Street in the rear for proposed lot A, and also ample access on Leonard Street for emergency vehicles as well. So I would submit that public health and safety is not endangered and the special permit should issue. Thank you.
Okay. Immediate questions by the board?
Seems pretty straightforward.
I have a couple questions. So I guess my first question is why does this need to be done?
Well,
And-
more for estate planning purposes. The one lot's going to be retained by one family member, one by another, and they do want the potential to be able to sell it separately.
Well, why not make it a condo?
Well, condominium ownership has more strings attached. We could make it as a condo, but you know, it's harder to sell marketing wise as a condo, and you do share. In this case, you would share master insurance, so people tend to like the separate ownership. It's easier to sell and it has more value that way.
Well, my two concerns is, one, it could now be eligible to add an ADU. And secondly, we're creating a new lot that's less than the 40A minimum of 5,000 square feet. And one thing I learned over the years on this board from Dave Gardner and Michelle Harrison is you never create or approve a new lot under 5,000 square feet. So I was surprised when the numbers came out.
I have done these before with less than 5,000. We could certainly reconfigure. It's easy enough to reconfigure to do that. We just thought it made sense to make the lot line around the existing landscape wall, because that's what separates the yards currently.
I agree with you, Joe, about we wouldn't create a new lot under 5,000 square feet, but I think the standard on the 3.1.8, which from my understanding is a very unique Gloucester piece of zoning. I think our only standard is it compromise health and safety? I don't think we can look at it and say it's too small. I mean, they're already existing. The use has been in.
I agree. I read that statute fully, and I see it as very limited. But does it kick back to the 40A state standards of 5,000 square foot for the minimum lot in Massachusetts? And since we're creating it new, can you actually create new lots under 5,000 square feet?
If I
I
could
don't
speak
think
to
you
that.
can.
If I can speak to that, I believe you can. The 5,000 square feet you're talking about is the absolute, with 50 feet of frontage, is the absolute minimum size required for a grandfathered lot. So regardless of what your zoning holds, it's got to be at least 5,000 square feet with 50 feet of frontage. I think that's what you may be referring to. That's for a grandfathered lot.
Right,
And
but
that-
we're trying to create a lot less than that.
No, I know, but it's for a grandfathered vacant lot that you intend to build on. This whole thing, I think, stems from the subdivision control law. It's sort of it sprung from that. That's why we set the date from 1960. That's when we adopted the subdivision control law. So these buildings had to exist before that. I have done them before, less than 5,000 square feet.
You've separated them with less than 5,
Yes.
left less than 5. Well, I'd love to have seen a reference to one of those cases.
I mean, I'm happy to reconfigure it to make it 5 if you want. I mean, it's only adding what, almost 500 square feet. They can do that if you want.
Well, I don't know that it would make it any better. You're tight up against that garage. I don't know. I just, I don't know, just thinking down the road, I don't think anybody's gonna wanna. We also have a law now that could allow an ADU. And nobody thinks about all these possibilities when they create these changes of what could happen. And I'm sure the neighbors, if that was submitted as a comprehensive thing, would be dead against it, but who knows? Let's take some testimony from the public. We did receive one letter in opposition, which everybody got, but that person may speak. So anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the application, anyone in favor, please raise your hand. You should be able to raise your hand on your device. Everybody's on a device. Anyone in favor? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Anyone in opposition? Don't see any. Will. Geez, I had that letter here. But there was the neighbor to the left,
Yeah, 35
letter.
Leonard Street.
opposite, with concerns.
Yeah,
You have that in front of them?
I do. I just did. Whoops. Hold on. It was at 35 Leonard Street. Marlene Dickinson, I think it was. Yeah, Marlene Dickinson. Do you want me to read it?
Sure. Read it into the record. again.
My name is Marlene Dickinson. My husband Brad and I live at 35 Leonard Street and wish to oppose the two-car parking site plan for parking along Arbor Street. We were never consulted or informed about the initial parking pad that was installed there 2 years ago. As an abutter, we should have been notified. We oppose the proposed site plan that shows tandem parking for 2 cars in that space. The proposed parking site is in the front lawn of the Brown House. Our outdoor deck overlooks the yard where the proposed cars would be located. The distance from our deck to the wall where the second car would be parked is only 17 feet. Best wishes, Marlene Dickinson.
Okay, thank you. So another question was, so these new parking spots off of Leonard Street for the parcel on the left, are they over or encroach at all on top of the step system?
No, and it's not, it's not a proposed, that exists. What she's referring to, by the way, 2 years ago was a curb cut permit that was obtained to put that parking space in. But they will not encroach on the step system's a bit to the right of that.
Okay, because we had that come up before with DPW had to give the okay, because they have to be able to access it. And you couldn't pave over it or anything. Okay,
Would you like me to rebut the letter?
sure.
So, parking, we show parking sort of as just more illustrative purposes, just to show that we have ample space to park. Parking is not a requirement here. We certainly are providing ample parking. We're providing 2 spaces for a single family home. That's sufficient in the zone if parking did apply, but it does not. So, and also there's a fence and a hedge and a tree between that property at 35 and these cars. So the viewing of the cars would be screened naturally anyway. There's a white picket fence, a shrub and a tree there. And again, it's not part of the requirements of section 3.1.5.
When in the photos, I don't see where there's existing.
Yeah, there was a little white picket fence. Does anybody do you want me to put up the?
Well, I'm looking at the pictures, but I didn't see. I see the white picket fence. I didn't see a driveway.
It's there, it's
From
paved.
the other direction.
Oh, yeah, there is not one really with the there is parking right in front of the little, when I went by, there was just one.
There it is right there. That's Google Street View, so it is there.
Okay, so that's the curb cut, yeah. look at that.
Yeah, and there's the fence. I don't know if you can see it. There's the fence I was referring to. So the car at 35 would be the white one.
Yeah.
So it is installed.
Okay, great. Discussion by the board?
I have a
Um,
question.
Who's that, Peter?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, bringing up again the ADU, and I know it's not really what's before us. But to ask a question about that, is there still certain setbacks that they have to meet to comply for the ADU, certain variances, they have to have a certain lot, square footage, or is it just by right? Because I thought there was still some parameters to that.
I don't know if you're asking me. I didn't review this. I didn't review the ADU ordinance in preparation for this, but it can be done as a matter of right. I know if you meet certain parameters, I think certain setbacks is one of them. And any of those parameters can be waived by special permit without variance. But again, I didn't specifically look at that in preparation for this hearing.
So in other words, if just hypothetically went forward and this got subdivided and someone applied for the ADU, they would still have to come before us for an approval. either
Not
on a
if they met
variance-
all the requirements.
Yeah, I mean, I can guarantee you that proposed lot A would have to come before you. I can't say with proposed lot B without obviously doing an analysis, but
Right. I think I was just trying to say, hey, if they had to come before us anyways, if there was any concerns about the ADU, and they still had to come before us, I think that would be something we could just treat at another time and draw concerns if there was too much crowding. I mean, I personally don't have an issue with the subdividing, though. I do understand what Mr. Chairman's saying about under 5,000 square feet, if that could be met in any way. I thought that was something that would be considered.
again, I think the 5,000 square feet is for vacant lots that are legally non-conforming. The law does exempt lots with pre-existing structures on them. So what you're referring to is the minimum building size for a vacant lot under zoning. So a zoning ordinance could certainly make it larger for a minimum lot size. It cannot make it smaller for vacant lots for a proposed building. So that's the minimum legally non-conforming size that you have to have in the state.
That wasn't what I was going by, but anyway. I don't know. Catherine, your thoughts?
Well, just to go to Peter's question, I'm looking at the ADU ordinance right now, the only dimensional thing, I mean, there's some size dimensional things, but in height, but it just says where the driveway for an ADU, where the driveway is located within 10 feet of the side lot line, at least 4 feet of the driveway side yard measured from the side lot line shall be landscaped as a buffer zone. So I guess you'd have to have at least 4 feet.
Well, yeah, and if they met the square footage, no bigger than 800 and no greater than 25% of the other house, it would be a matter of right.
Well, I mean,
So-
if the ADU is a concern, we could always condition it. that says-
I'm happy to have that. They have no intention whatsoever of doing that. And I'm sure they're happy to condition that for no ADU. Not a problem at all.
I mean, the brown house couldn't fit an ADU, but the
No.
White House could.
Right.
Might be able to, but again, they've expressed no intention to do that, and they're happy if it pleases the board to put a condition in for that.
Okay. Anybody
Uh,
else? Comments? James, Glenn? Anybody?
I mean, I get it's a little unconventional, but I mean, Annisquam's been chopped up, so I really don't have a big problem with any of it.
Yeah.
Okay. So if there's no more discussion, we'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion, I guess. No one else wants to.
Do we want to put a condition on that motion, or are we?
I
agree to
would.
that,
I
Okay,
would just, because, yes, I agree with James that, Anscombe is very, very tight down there in the village. But it doesn't mean we need to make it any tighter. So if people are willing, I would put that condition on it.
agreed.
On the petition of Sarah Ann Hackett Trust, 1994, for a special permit to subdivide a lot containing two detached dwellings into 2 lots with a dwelling on each lot at 34 Leonard Street. I would move approval of the petition with the condition that the applicant cannot place a ADU on either lot. I think the applicant has shown, I mean, it's a health and safety standard. I mean, the 2 houses have existed there for so long without seemingly causing any problems, having 2 separate dwellings. I don't think putting a lot line is really going to change the use or pattern of use or really impact the neighborhood. So I would move approval for those reasons with the condition.
Second,
We have a motion made and seconded to grant the special permit to subdivide into 2 lots at 31 Leonard Street with the condition. Roll call vote.
Mr. Canavo,
yes.
Mr. Gelati,
Yes.
Ms. Schlichty,
Yes.
Mr. Gyllenhaal. Your microphone's off. He's giving a thumbs up.
I think you have to audibly say it.
Yeah, you're supposed to.
I could read his lips said yes. Oh, we just heard you.
Just muted, yeah.
How about that? Am I
There you
here?
go.
Now
Now
you're
you're,
good.
I don't know what happened. I'm technically challenged, but yes.
Voting yes, okay.
Mr. Parisi,
I also vote yes. You've heard our decision's favorable. We'd appreciate a draft and I will stamp and sign those plans.
Be happy to do that.
To the office.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, last hearing of the night is the petition of Carlo A. Barbara for a special permit to alter an existing non-conforming structure to exceed the maximum building height less than 35 feet, and for fewer off-street parking spaces, variance for reduced lot area, front and side yard setbacks, and percentage of vegetative cover to convert an attic into an additional dwelling unit at 96 Washington Street. Attorney Favazza, I believe. Yeah, no, that was wrong.
When you were,
There you are.
okay. For the record, my name is Joel Favazza. I am an attorney at Seaside Legal Solutions with an address of 123 Main Street here in Gloucester. I'm just going to put up a quick slideshow here. So at the outset, just by way of a little bit of housekeeping, I believe one of those last minute look-throughs on the presentation, the request, et cetera. I think we actually requested more relief and variance than is actually necessary, and I'll explain that as I go. You'll note as I go through this that this was before the board once before. And I think the last time it was here was prior to some amendments to the GZO, so some of the numbers that carried forward have actually gotten reduced. So I'll get to that in a moment. So the proposed work here is to add a second residential use to a mixed use building. And that required a change of use. The mixed use definition was an amendment done sometime in the last 10 years or so. And it was worded kind of strangely that one residential unit and one commercial unit can be mixed use. But once you get a second residential unit, even though there's a commercial unit on the first floor still, it's no longer a mixed use, it skips into multifamily. And so the idea is just trying to convert vacant attic space into a second residential unit. There's gonna be 2 dormers. Only one is a full dormer. They look from the front to be both full dormers, but it's deceiving. I'll show you in a second. One dormer is strictly an entrance, exit, stairwell dormer. And there's also a proposal for a deck on the front of the building for that, the second floor unit that's already there. So by way of background, we are in a neighborhood business district. We need a special permit for use, and we also need a pile of relief to basically re-permit the existing building. So you're gonna hear me talk a lot about dimensional variances, height permits, et cetera. None of that relates to, any exterior changes happening to the building. It's just to re-permit the existing building under a new use. As you all know, when you skip from one use line on those use tables in section 2 to a different use line, you wipe out whatever lawful status you had as a pre-existing non-conforming. So again, by way of background, this is a non-conforming lot, non-conforming structure. It was built in 1900, at least probably prior, but the assessor has it at 1900. Similar relief was denied in 2016. However, one of the big changes from then until now is that the previous design had a full double dormer. And again, this is the current proposal. This side, this one side faces the street, right? Faces Beacon Street. One side faces some nearby properties. This is the proposed dormer facing the nearby properties. It's strictly as a secondary means of egress. For reference, the design that was denied in 2016 had a complete dormer with 3 windows looking out at the nearby neighbors. So I want to be very clear that although the petition at its heart to convert the attic space into another housing unit is the same, the exterior design is very different, taking in kind of lessons learned from the opposition of one nearby neighbor the last go round. Additionally, since 2016, I'd be remiss not to point out that we have received a 2017 housing production plan, which gave us until last year to create over 600 units of housing, and the city again created less than half of that housing required to avoid what they call the housing crisis, which I think people would, rightfully say we are now experiencing. So this was the dimensional table we submitted. Again, I think the error made was that you'll see the 10,000 square foot dimension for lot area. That was, it used to be the multifamilies required a double lot size. That's since been amended, so that number should be 5,000. And so instead of 6171, that number should be 1171. It's still the same variance in that it's a lot area variance, but the numeric value of it is different. And again, none of it is due to an actual exterior change or relocation of any structure on the property. It's just to re-permit the structure that's there. So this is your existing condition kind of 2D site plan. You can see the house is built straight up to Washington Street and Beacon Street property lines, and then it has concrete parking in the rear and some gravel parking also in the rear. And that just shows you, that shows you just the calculation for the roof peak. Average grade is a little below the first floor. So we've outlined the changes in red. Unit 2 already exists. You'll see the work there is to just increase the exterior decks. And that work would all just be special permits, alter and expand. They're also doing some interior work in the bathroom area. The 3rd floor plan, obviously, that's where the major work is being done inside. That's to add living space where there is no living space currently. And if you look at the right side of the 3rd floor plan, you see this low area and mechanical area. This is because, again, there is no dormer on the right-hand side this go around. And so this habitable space, or what would have been habitable space, is not going to be habitable space this time around. Close that. So this is what the house looks like from Washington Street with the proposed dormers, again, on the right-hand side of this top picture, which faces the nearby neighbor. From this 2D, it looks like the big full dormer, but again, I remind you, it is just that single entry exit dormer to allow that door to have sufficient height is not a full dormer. However, on the Beacon Street side, it is a full dormer, complete with windows, etc. And these are just the existing condition plans, This is a aerial shot of the property itself. Again, you can see the house built up to the lines, the parking in the rear. That's the map, GeoGIS data. Here's a picture of the house from the street. And so one of the special permits we need is a use permit. And those are governed by section 128.3 and have a use permit, again, for a quote unquote multifamily, but it is a multifamily that has 2 residential and 1 commercial. And that requires a 6-factor test, which we'll walk through. So again, social, economic, community needs, as I stated, we are several hundred units short of the required housing based on the city's own housing production plan. So this adds 1 additional unit of housing, traffic flow and safety. And so you'll notice that there's requests later in this slideshow for parking relief, but I'm here calling adequate parking. And this is what I mean by that. The parking, the full number of required parking spaces takes into account the 2 residential units and the hair salon on the first floor. The hair salon has no parking currently, has never had parking currently. There are at least 3 spaces in the driveway, and 3 spaces is what these 2 units need. So as far as the residential units are concerned, there are 3 off-street spaces for the 2 units. The hair salon does not have any spaces assigned to it, but it never has. So again, as far as like what the adding of the residential unit is going to be, it's not going to impact the hair salon not having parking. It doesn't now, it won't in the future. That's just kind of, how it is over there. Again, utilities and public services are fine. We are in the downtown, plenty of high capacity utilities down there. So if you look through the surrounding neighborhood, even though this house is in the neighborhood business district, most of the surrounding neighborhood is R5, and there are a lot of multifamily buildings in this area. We're in the Beacon Street, Commonwealth Ave area. On the other side of School Street, Addison Street, tons of multis over there. There's no impact to the quality of the natural environment because we are sticking within the footprint of the existing building. And obviously there's, fiscal impact on both ends. There is additional rental income for the owner. As we are living in extensive times. This will help him continue to upkeep the building. It's allowing him to, as you saw, renovate part of the second floor, make that unit nicer as part of this work. And of course, it adds tax revenue to the city because the assessors will get to assess a additional unit, and that is new growth tax revenue, which lets the city go beyond the 2.5% limit that we have on annual budgeting otherwise. Then we get to the dimensional variances. The standard there is about literal enforcement creating a hardship, that hardship relating to the soil or shape, topography of the structure or land in question. And you have to make sure the relief does not harm public good. So obviously, if you literally enforce the zoning ordinance, this becomes an unbuildable lot. It's not even 5,000 square feet. It's not something you could build on today if it was a vacant lot. So then you go, does the hardship relate to the soil or shape, etc.? Well, obviously, it relates in part to the arrangement of the lot itself, which again, I said is too small to begin with, and also relates back to the fact that this house was built up to the property lines, when it was first constructed. And so then you have to go, okay, well, if we, there's obviously a hardship here, but if we grant this relief, are we harming the public good? And again, I think if anything, you're servicing the public good because you're providing a safe, new unit of housing in the downtown area where, again, you're able to walk to Shaw's, walk to the train station, walk to downtown, walk to the library. It's a nice place to be able to add a housing unit in this area. And then the second to last permit we requested relates to the alteration expansion of the existing non-conforming structure. Again, even though we're asking for dimensional relief via variances, I always like to belt and suspender this and just also get a 1.9 permit. And of course, the standard there would be what we're doing cannot be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing configuration. Again, the exterior changes include the full dormer on the left side, the small dormer on the right side, and the additional decks on the second floor. We have a height permit. Again, the building is not getting any higher. It happens to be 30.3 feet above average grade. So you run that test, you go, is the height consistent with the neighborhood character? Well, yeah, because the height of the house will still be the height of the house. Nothing being added to it exceeds the max height as it currently. Is going to obstruct any views, overshadow. Again, the dormer is not exceeding the height permit. The only thing this height permit applies to is the last 0.3 of a foot of the very peak of the roof. So when you think about overshadowing and view obstructions, it's because that last 0.3 feet of the roof block anybody's view or cast shadow. And obviously it's a de minimis impact. It was just the peak of the roof itself. And then we have the parking permit. Again, we have two sets of calculations. We have the retail space requires 7.5 spaces, which you round up to 8, right? And right now it has 0, and it would still have 0 afterwards. We're not actually reducing, we're not taking any spaces from the salon to create this unit. And then you look at the residential side of things, and the 2 units require a total of 3 spaces, and there are 3 spaces in the driveway. So as far as this new residential unit being created, we meet the parking requirement, and the denial of this permit would not solve the hair salon's parking shortage, because they do not have rights to park in this driveway. So again, to recap, this is a lot of permitting for actually a pretty basic construction project. We are re-permitting the entire building as it stands, and then adding 1 single bedroom residential unit, exterior decks, 1 full dormer, and a small entry and exit dormer. And so again, we are looking for a parking permit, a height permit, dimensional variances for lot area, front yard, right side yard, and a special permit to alter and expand. And we're looking for a change in use special permit to convert from a mixed use property to a multifamily with 2 residential and 1 commercial unit. As always, I thank you. Along, I will turn it back over. I imagine there may be some questions, because that was a lot.
Thank you. Any board questions at the moment? Are we ready for testimony?
I'm good.
Okay, anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the application, please raise your hand. Anyone in favor? Beverly Palmacci, I'm not sure how to say it.
Hi, I'm Beverly Palmacci at 8 Commonwealth Avenue. So I'm diagonally across from this building, but on Commonwealth, if we call this a block. I don't see any problem with this in terms of the height of the building. I do have a couple of questions regarding what Attorney Favazza just said. Can I ask them?
You state your questions and then we'll have response after.
The building next to it, that are the 2 condos, the blue building, do they have parking? Does the Attorney
Are we
Favazza know?
talking about going up Beacon Street?
Yes,
No, they don't.
okay. My only exit from Wells Street, because I'm on Commonwealth and Wells, my driveway is on Wells. So the only way I can leave my house is to drive down Wells Street. If I want to get to Washington, I take a left on Beacon.
Yep.
So when I take a left on Beacon, there is almost always a car parked in front of that salon, making the exit very dangerous. And that's just something I'd like to comment on, because I don't think cars are supposed to park that close to the corner. And that is an issue. I didn't know that there was enough space in that lot behind the building for this salon to have a parking space, but that is an issue. It's a safety issue. And the other question I had, that this will provide a reasonably affordable unit. What does that mean?
Okay. Anything else? They'll respond during the rebuttal to you.
Okay, okay, fine, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Patty Sites?
Yes, I am not entirely in opposition. I've
Um,
had.
I need you just to get your name and address for the record.
Oh,
please.
yes, Patricia Sites. I own the property at 100 and 102 Washington Street. Those are the ones directly adjacent and most affected, by whatever is done on that property.
Okay,
So the distance because my property at the rear is essentially on the lot line, and the property at the front is just a few feet off of my lot line, we're essentially only a few feet away from that building. The biggest concern I've had conversations with Carlo around only allowing the dormer on the other side, so I appreciate that he's moving in that direction. And that part I have no issue with whatsoever. And the clarity on the building height is great because I did not see the section in the original. As he talked to me, he never had mentioned it. And I was like, this is really a problem if you're actually going higher. The main issue that I have is that it appeared, in being up there as I started to, I garden that lot, that little bit of land that is underneath that front stair, and just to make a decent entry for me. Periodically, there has been trash that shows up there. I clean it out, and I've kept plants there. So, it's always been their prerogative to take them out if they wanted, but I think it's better for everybody. There's there's several large plants there. So the bringing down of the stair to the back is a problem because it's going to pretty much wipe all that out. And that is the part that is new to how close it is to the lot line, because that stair now comes, and I guess if they're doing if they move to a multifamily, that'll be a 42-inch wide stair. I'm not sure, Joel, if that none of those dimensions are on the plan, which means it's actually, it's a few feet away from my building. And that part of the building in the back, so I have two buildings there. The back one is 100, and adding a deck there is of concern because I have no protection. Literally, my windows are on that line. So my question is there a way, and it looks like it would work, if the access to the door at that top unit moved back farther, it could actually connect to the front stair rather than building an entire new stair with everything down. It's not a beautiful view for us, and it does actually create, a lot more construction rather than a clean wall that is there now. So, and it's a really tight lot. I cannot tell you how tight that lot is. So the lot that, as they said, the average setback from their lot is 3 feet, and I'm on the lot line at the rear. So that means that some of those intrusions are going to be within 3 feet of my property. So that's the issue that I have. I'm not, I always wondered if it was possible. I understand the need that the city has for an additional dwelling unit in ADU, and I'm not necessarily opposed to it. I just think the stair is excessive. And if you look at that north side, you can see that it's actually kind of taking up a very long distance along it. So that's my biggest concern. And an alternative to me is that they add bedrooms up there and add it to that second floor unit rather than making a whole new unit up there, which would allow, a larger group to be there. But from my alternative, if they could connect it to that front stair, it would be much better.
thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, rebuttal.
Thank you. I think the questions that were asked, I can address those. Chairman Parisi, you answered the question with the parking. Is my understanding also that the building to the left, as you look at from Beacon, does not have parking. I would also point out that the building to the left on Beacon, which I believe was 5 Beacon, did write a letter of support that should be in the file. It was submitted with the application. So one of the direct abutters is in written support. They're not here tonight, but they did write in support of the project. The question about what I was referring to when I said something was going to be reasonably affordable, what I meant is that it's not going to be deed restricted, a quote unquote, affordable unit. But again, this is going to be a modest downtown unit. It's got eat-in kitchen, living room combo. It's got a bedroom, 1 bedroom, 1 bath. It has laundry in the unit. But otherwise, it's a pretty small unit. And so just as a factor of the market, this is not going to be, a $2,000 a month apartment, right? This is going to be something that, workforce housing type thing, right? So we could live comfortably downtown in this. And that's what I meant by, reasonably affordable. I want to use the word affordable, make anyone think it's going to be deed restricted and have the grants department involved and all that sort of stuff. As to Ms. Sykes' concern about the stairs, unfortunately, the stairs need to lead to the rear because that is where the parking area is. And it just seems poor design to expect a 3rd floor tenant to park in the driveway, walk with their groceries all the way down Beacon Street, all the way down the front of the building on Washington Street, come around that corner, and then start walking up to a 3rd floor walk up, especially, groceries, inclement weather. That's a very inconvenient walk, and there is space on this property. Again, I appreciate that things are close, but for as close as Mr. Barbara's house is to the property line, Ms. Sykes is closer, right? And so it's not his responsibility to account for the fact that her house is less than, about 0.1 feet off the property line, right? That's where her house happens to be. And as a result, when things get built, on Mr. Barbara's property, they are, by default, going to be close. They'll still be much further from the property line than her house is. And the last thing I'll say about the deck, again, the deck really, if able to be done outside this project, probably wouldn't require any special permitting. We would just kind of go to the building department and say, hey, we're building an open air deck above existing footprint for the house. So I don't have the deck in the rear, the deck in the front are likely by right construction projects. The only part would be that we need special permits for would be this staircase. And again, there's nowhere else to put this staircase to get them down to the driveway where they're being expected to park and up to a 3rd floor apartment, by sending it to the front or something like that. So again, you go back to the standard, we're talking about public good. I do not think, again, not to dismiss Ms. Sykes' concerns. I think they're absolutely valid, but the concern about that staircase being close to her house is not a public good standard. It's not, doesn't rise to that level. Same thing about substantial detriment to the neighborhood. Again, a stairway that may be non-preferential to Ms. Sykes is not going to be substantially detrimental to the neighborhood as compared to what's there now. And I don't think there's any argument from anybody that the other relief requested or the use itself was objectionable. So I don't think I need to respond to that. I think we've laid out that we've met the standards for the use, the reduction in parking, the height permit, et cetera. It's just really those variances and the special permit that have that neighborhood / public good component. I'd say that although we understand the concerns, we've tried our best, again, eliminated an entire dormer on that side in an attempt to compromise. I think we've gotten to the point where we've met the standard also, and that we're not harming the public good and we are not being substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood with this design. So I would just repeat my request for the relief requested. Thank you.
Thank you.
But the second egress, Joel, goes out, a hallway by the washer dryer bathroom out to a deck, and there's a set of stairs out the back. So I mean, I think Ms. Sykes has a point. I mean, if you did connect to that other set of stairs, it gets rid of a lot of bulk on that side of the building. I understand you probably have to reconfigure your mechanic room because you might have to move that closer to the front in order to get the distance to hit the second. Or is it for privacy for the second floor unit that you don't want to go by their stairwell.
Wow.
We'd expect that, although the deck would be available, you know, so there would be the recreational deck, right? People would be out there, you know, enjoying the weather. We'd expect that the solitary staircase that's direct access to the third floor likely be what's used. The second floor apartment is expected to be really kind of taking ownership of that second floor level. You're kind of walking through their space as you go down that set of stairs. And again, you know, not trying to minimize anything, but if you look at the standards, again, it doesn't say this has to be beneficial to everyone, right? It doesn't even say it can't be harmful to anyone. It doesn't even say it can't be harmful to the neighborhood. You just can't be substantially more harmful. And I wouldn't think this is harmful to the neighborhood, period. I appreciate that the sites may not be thrilled with this part of the design, but again, for this board to potentially deny these permits and say that that staircase is somehow harming the public good or somehow substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than what's presently there, I don't think that any harm or you know, suspected harm that's been articulated by one neighbor rises to that standard.
Well, the other thing I would say is structurally, architecturally and building wise, almost impossible to bring that third floor stairway, second egress down to the egress for the unit
On
two.
the second floor?
You just can't, well, one, you can't have one stairway land on another stairway. And to get it down fast enough, you know, to get down 10 feet in that short a period, and then have to share that little landing with the unit two, you know, that's a good staircase for unit two if they're walking down Washington and just want to hop up in the house. But I don't think, and looking at the side view, I mean, we're talking some open balusters, some railing. It's not like it's a blocked in underneath structure or anything. It's just a
No,
stair.
right. Still want to block off the light to the second floor unit, but yeah, you're right. It's posts.
And then you run out of room down below too, because you do want to have a wider stairway. The other one's existing. But you are going to have the proper size stairway from the third floor unit egress, you know, so. I think that's the way it almost has to be, just my thought.
I mean, overall popping another unit up there, I think is a good use of that attic space, but which is kind of the greater good, I think, in my mind.
Yeah, being able to do it without adding height. I mean, I know the full dormer on the other side was the issue. You had people going down a stairway aren't hanging around there and looking in the windows of the house next door. They're going up and down the stairway. So yeah, if it was a full dormer, yeah, people could sit in their living room or bedroom and look out into the house next door. It's really close, but I don't think that's going to be.
Right, and I understand the question about affordability. It's a slippery issue, but I guess what Joel is saying, the smaller it is, the cheaper it's gonna be for rental purposes or whatnot.
Mm.
Whether that's still affordable, I guess, is a debatable question, but yeah.
I do see Ms. Seitz has her hand up, but when you're not allowed, you're allowed to testify once. You don't get a rebuttal, only the applicant gets a rebuttal, so no disrespect. I'm not ignoring your hand up, but that's the rules of procedure. Any
I
other
mean,
comments
is
by the
there,
board? Go ahead, Peter.
I mean, I haven't, I'm very, very, very familiar with that property, that area. The traffic is pretty nasty around that. That corner is almost occupied. So, you know, anybody exiting Wells Street or even coming down Beacon Street makes it a challenge, even for first responders to come around. I've seen accidents happen there. Whether they change it from a 4-bedroom or to 2 separate units. I don't think that'll be an issue, but, you know, drawing concerns from 2 of the neighbors in that area, and, you know, they, you know, 96 Washington Street did make the attempt to clear out that side of the dormer in respect to the neighbor. I still find this a challenging location to add a unit, and I'm one to always in support. I think, you know, what little privacy she has next door will now be completely, you know, compromised. If there was another way, and I believe there is another way to create that egress, and I think it's unfair that she has to suffer because no one wants to share a common deck for people to walk in and up. You know, you really enjoy that deck, what, 3 months out of the year at best, and what do you know, I don't know. I just kind of have some different views on it. I'd like to see it happen. I wish there wasn't any opposition on it. And that's kind of where I stand on it.
Anybody else?
Can you hear me? It's Len.
Go ahead.
Mr. Favazza's argument mentioned a convenience. I tend to agree with Mr. Sykes' point of view, and I would tend to vote no for those reasons. It's a tough decision, but like we're all saying, it's a tight neighborhood. I'd like to see him do it a different way and protect the neighbor.
You mean by having this stair, they definitely need a second egress, right? They have the
Yep.
egress over the deck. They definitely need a second one for code purposes.
You talked about tying it into the other side or something like
To
that.
the existing stairs that go down from the second floor.
Yeah.
I'm not a builder. I don't know if that's possible. But
Anything's possible.
Yeah, but you gotta follow the building code. I mean, you can't have
Oh, 100%.
15-inch rises.
right, you can't have too steep a pitch, so maybe they have to move the dormer closer to the rear of the building than where it is.
Right,
Or
yeah. But then again, then you accessing the. I mean, it'd be a big, yeah, you'd have to change the whole floor plan.
well, you'd have to change the mechanical room and the whatever it was
Closet
beside.
and washer dryer.
Right, so maybe you'd switch those around. I don't know.
Yeah, you'd have to pull those over the other way.
I don't think it's asking for a lot considering just the way it draws a lot. I mean, I don't know. I have some reservations on it. I wish it could have been more accommodating for the
A
neighbors next
lot,
door.
it's a lot of
That-
massing. It's a lot of massing on that side of the building.
You know, it's
That's my point.
The result, though, would be, so you would now, if you look at the door coming out of the third floor. With
yes.
this plan, there's nothing to the left of that, which is the closest piece to her front house. Now, if you pull the doghouse dormer all the way back to the corner and
To
go
the rear of the
forward,
building, you mean?
and go forward, now
Yeah.
you're going to have just as much massing, but it's just going to go in a different direction. It's going to start at the back corner and travel all the way to the street. I almost wonder dimensionally, it's almost like the same as going the
Right.
back way. That's my
Right.
only thought. I mean, I know we're not eliminating any mass. We're just,
No,
somebody
Yeah.
said, let's go forward, and we're creating a more difficult situation to build. And again, the second floor unit can easily go down a flight of stairs to Washington Street. But now you're on the third floor. You don't want to climb all those stairs,
You need brakes.
you know?
Yeah.
I can see the idea behind the design and the logic in it, but
So I might be misreading this. So as I look at the plans in the west elevation, it looks like just one set of stairs going down the side of the building. As I look at the north elevation, it's still just this one elevation of stairs. It just has landing brakes in it, correct? It's not connected to these decks. No, it's not. I know it's not.
no, it's a flight of stairs.
Right.
yeah.
It does touch that way down the bottom one.
On the roof of that
It's,
comes up.
yeah, it's above where
the
that
roof of the
AC
garage.
unit is and everything. And then that, but it's a, like you say, I think it's a limited amount of massing, really. And then picture moving that dormer all the way to the right, and then taking all that same massing all the way back down to the street. I don't think we're gaining anything there.
No,
Yeah,
I'd agree. And if you were gonna try to land on the second floor deck, you'd have to bring the dormer the other way, and now you have even more shading on the neighbor's house.
yeah, I think the solutions will get worse.
Yeah, I would agree.
Right.
Okay, I will rely on people who have far more building experience than I do. I'm okay with it.
Any more discussion, or are we ready for a motion?
I'm good.
Anybody want to make a motion? You want me to make a motion?
You can, go ahead.
Sure, okay. For special permit and variances, Joel, is that what we're,
It's a use special permit, a height special permit,
alter, expand,
special
height,
permit, and alter
lesser
expansion.
parking? Variances,
It's 4 specials and 1 variance? Or-
4 specials and
1, 2, 3, 4
four-
variances.
4 variances. 4 special permits and 4 dimensional variances.
Okay, this is one of those that, as you said, sounds like an enormous amount of relief for a small project, but as you said, it's because you changed the use. No pre-existing non-conforming can be considered.
Right.
So on the
Pretty much.
petition.
Mm.
Who's the applicant? On the petition of Carlo Barber seeking a special permit for a change of use to a multifamily dwelling, a special permit to alter, expand a non-conforming dwelling, a special permit for height to exceed the maximum allowable height, and a special permit for a lesser number of parking spaces, together with variances for lot area, front and side yard setback, and vegetative cover. I would move approval of all the relief requested. I think that, you know, the change of use is, I think the applicant has demonstrated that they meet actually all of the criteria for the relief requested. We're dealing with an old building in downtown that's on existing lot. It's right on its setbacks. I mean, we can't expect an applicant to knock down the building and bring it into compliance. We're just trying to make I think a modest and reasonable expansion of the use on an existing building. I do hear the neighbors' concerns about the parking on Beacon Street, although I don't think we can lay that on the applicant. Like a lot of people are parking on Beacon Street. We don't know who's parking on Beacon Street. I would suggest maybe asking the police to enforce that if there continues to be a problem, because that is a tight corner. But as far as the applicants demonstrated, I think they've demonstrated the requisites for the relief requested, and I would vote for all the relief sought.
I would second it.
We have
mean,
a
I-
motion made
Yes.
and seconded for 4 special permits and 4 variances for 96 Washington Street. We'll have a roll call vote.
Mr. Gelati,
Yes, for all the relief requested.
Ms. Schlichting,
Yes, with understanding of you know. Yes, I'm voting yes because I've been swayed by my fellow members that the massing is not really going to be any different. So I'm voting yes for all the relief requested.
Pavel,
Who did, you asking me?
Who
Peter,
did you call?
Peter,
Oh, no, for the reasons, you know, the neighbors have drawn serious concern and having that stairway that significantly close to their property. I feel like there's a little, you know, whatever privacy she had is now gone. And that's the only reason why I think it's a good project. I wish it was just a little bit different because I do really like it. I did want to vote yes for it. But for those reasons stated, I vote no.
Mr. Gyllenhaal,
No, same reasons.
Mr. Parisi,
Yes. We've heard a decision, it's not favorable, 3-2. We will I will put together a decision for that and get it out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it for tonight. Anybody have anything they need to bring up? If not, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
Just a reminder again that I will miss,
June 20 something, right?
yep.
Yeah, I got you down. Yeah.
Cool.
Motion to
Motion
adjourn.
to adjourn.
Second.
Second,
Made and seconded, roll call.
Mr. Gyllenhaal,
Yes.
Mr. Gelati,
Yes.
Ms. Schlichting,
Yes.
Mr. Canavo,
yes.
Mr. Parisi.
Yes, we are adjourned. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good
Good night. Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you.
Bye.